My family called me a failure, but I turned their rejection into millions. When my dad called me nothing and kicked me out, I walked away heart pounding and made a choice. My name is Casey Jordan, and I built an $18 million company from scratch. No degree, just grit. His rejection fueled my resolve to redefine family on my terms. You won't believe what I built next. You're listening to Renvenge Zinnia, where buried truths are told by those who live them. Subscribe and share your thoughts in the comments. That night, I left behind a family that couldn't see me, but my path started long before. At 13 in Spokane, Washington, I taped flyers for my lemonade stand to mailboxes and tracked flavor prices in a spiral notebook. A skinny kid with a sunburn, I learned faster by burning my hand than reading any warning label. My dad, Gregory, spent his entire career at a regional bank, the kind of man who ironed his shirts on Sunday and organized bills by color-coded binder clips. My mom, Marianne, taught second grade and had the gentle kind of patience that makes 7-year-olds believe they can do anything. Dad believed in college like it was a religion. 4 years, a respectable major, a job with benefits, a life without the instability he said had dogged his own childhood. He repeated it so often it felt less like advice and more like a law of physics. My brother Ethan fit the family blueprint perfectly. Varsity soccer captain, calculus team, early admission to a state school. My sister Laura loved rules almost as much as Dad did, turning checklists into an art form. I loved tools. I loved hacking together a solution from whatever I had. A hairdryer to unstick glued phone screens, binder clips as cable organizers, a bungee cord to keep our rickety gate from swinging open during windstorms. At 11, I ran a Saturday fix-it bar out of our garage with a hand-painted sign that said, Casey's Repairs. Honest work, fast turnaround. I charged $5 to clean out dust-choked laptops and $10 to replace cracked phone screens if customers brought their own parts. Folks tipped in cookies and cash. Word spread. My dad frowned. It's cute, Case, but you need to spend that time on your studies. Life's not a string of lemonade stands. I nodded, then got up at dawn to prep for my busiest hours, 7:30 to 10 a.m., when people ran errands before kids' games. By high school, my world lived less in textbooks and more in spreadsheets I built after midnight. I taught myself to code just enough to break and fix things. When a local boutique posted grainy photos of their jewelry on Facebook, I messaged the owner and offered to shoot brighter product pictures on my mom's kitchen table and rebuild their Shopify theme. I charged $120 for the whole job and delivered it in 3 nights of frantic Googling. The owner hugged me and slipped me an extra $40, and for a week I felt 10 feet tall. But our dinner table had a gravitational pull that dragged everything back to degrees and security. Dad would talk about compounding interest and career ladders, and then he'd glance at me with this careful neutrality. You're smart, Case. Be smart about the rest of your life. What he meant was, be more like your siblings. To keep the peace, I enrolled at Spokane Community College after graduation. I lasted 1 semester. It wasn't the learning. I love learning more than anything. It was the way we never touched the live wire. We diagrammed case studies from 2009 while I was watching new marketing tactics flash and die on the internet in real time. I sat in the back, took notes, did well on every exam, and felt like I'd left my body somewhere else. I dropped out at 19 with $2,800 saved from odd jobs and weekend gigs. Telling my parents detonated the kind of silence you only hear after glass breaks. Dad's face went a color I hadn't seen since Ethan took out the mailbox with Mom's minivan. You're throwing away your future for what, Casey? A website? You think there's a pension plan and YouTube tutorials? Mom squeezed my forearm under the table but didn't say much. Laura stared at her water glass, her fingers tightening around it. Ethan muttered, "You're kidding," under his breath. I moved into a studio apartment over a nail salon that smelled faintly of acetone and jasmine. The walls were thin, and the heater hiccuped like an old man, but the place was mine. I bought a secondhand desk for $25, a chair that gave me backaches, and a used desktop tower that sounded like a small aircraft. I built a wall of sticky notes and told myself I had one job: make something useful enough that strangers would pay for it twice. I failed hard and fast. First was a drop-shipping store for pet gear. Collars fell apart and refunds got my PayPal account locked. Next, I tried social media services, scheduling posts and ads for cafes and gyms at $149 a month. Too scared to charge more. Overloaded with clients, I burned out and botched an ad renewal, letting down a gym owner. I shut it down that day. Then came hand-stamped keychains, but I couldn't scale past my own 2 hands. Each flop taught me something. Don't trust one supplier. Don't promise impossible deadlines. I jotted every lesson in a notebook I called tuition. When my bank account dipped below $300, I took a night shift warehouse job, using days to rethink my approach, determined to connect small makers with buyers who valued their work. Nora Patel, a sharp-eyed mentor I met at a business meetup, changed everything. "You've got grit," she said. "Build something real." Her diner sessions drilled me on numbers, shaping my vision. A marketplace linking small American makers with buyers craving authentic goods. I called it Foundry and Field, Steel and Soil. My first pitch landed a Boise leather worker. Soon others joined. I built product pages at my kitchen table, my heart in every word. The site launched, and a blogger's repost sent orders soaring. Early hiccups taught me to set high standards. By year 3, we hit $1 million in revenue, a quiet milestone I celebrated with a cupcake, proof my stubbornness was paying off. I didn't tell my parents the specifics, just, "It's going okay." When Mom mentioned a biopsy with uncovered costs, I nodded. "Keep me posted." That night, I arranged a $68,000 payment plan through a lawyer to keep my name off the records. The hospital paperwork listed donor fund. Mom cried, calling it an angel's help. Dad said, "We got lucky." I stayed silent. Foundry and Field grew fast, reaching 37 makers across 15 states. I hired Marcos, a customer service wizard, offering $21 an hour and health coverage to build a company I'd be proud of. Cash flow nearly crushed us in year 2, but I sold my car and fought through. By year 5, we had 31 employees, 370 makers nationwide, and a reputation for honesty. When an analyst valued us at $18 million, I laughed. It felt unreal, but it was my sweat, my stubbornness, my proof. I didn't tell my family any of that. They knew I ran an online shop. On good days, they called it your business. On bad days, your internet thing. When I tried to explain our vetting process or our return rates, Dad would nod like he was humoring me and pivot to Ethan's promotion or Laura's latest audit win. It hurt in a dull, constant way I didn't have words for. So I did what I always did. I worked. When Dad's 64th birthday came, I was done hiding. Not to boast, but because silence was erasing me. I bought a $200,000 retirement fund, hands shaking as I signed, picturing his relief. I drove to their brick house, azaleas trimmed into perfect spheres, ready to share my truth, not as a flex, but a bridge. At dinner, I wore a navy dress, hands trembling in deep pockets. Mom used the holiday plates. Ethan wore a sport coat. Laura's heels clicked like a metronome. Dad sat at the head, hands steepled, pleased with his predictable world. We talked about Ethan's new territory, Laura's partner track, the neighbor's fence, Mom's herb garden. Then, a pause opened, and I spoke. "Hey," I said, voice steady as I could make it. "I've got something to share about my work." 3 pairs of eyes turned. Dad reached for the knife to cut the roast. "Go on." "Foundry and Field was valued at $18 million last quarter," I said, the words strange in my mouth. "We have 31 employees, over 370 U.S. makers, and I've been helping out. Mom's hospital bills, Ethan's down payment, Laura's venue. Not for credit, just because I could." The silence was sharp, brittle. Dad set the knife down like it might spark, eyes on the table. "What's valued mean, Casey? Internet companies toss numbers like confetti. No degree, no foundation." He gestured, as if a diploma were stone. "You've been slipping money behind our backs, making us charity?" Ethan's jaw tightened, his eyes flicking to Mom, waiting for her voice. Laura's fork clicked. She whispered, "You didn't tell us." Mom said my name, soft as gauze, her hand hovering over mine but pulling back. "I wanted to help," I said, holding steady. "The valuation." "Valuation," Dad spat, the word sour. His eyes met mine, flint sharp. "A dropout with a website, acting like you're the smartest here because some blogger hyped you up." It felt like the air pressure changed. I could hear my heartbeat in my ears. "I didn't say I'm—" "You think money makes you better?" He snapped, finally looking straight at me. His eyes were flint. "You're still the kid who couldn't commit to finishing what she started. You got lucky, that's all. Anyone can get lucky." Mom's eyes softened, but she stayed silent, caught between us. Ethan stared at the table. Laura's lips thinned, a look I knew from childhood fights. I reached into my bag and slid the envelope with the retirement fund paperwork toward Dad, palm sweaty enough to smudge the pen ink. "I set this up for you," I said. "It's not about better. It's about breathing room." He didn't open it. "I don't want your charity," he said, "and I don't want your attitude. If you're going to stand here and throw your internet money at us like it makes you part of this family, you can leave." He stood up. The chair legs scraped the wood. The room got very small and very loud. "Dad," I said, but my voice sounded far away. "Get out," he said, pointing to the door. "If you won't respect how we do things, get out." No one moved. No one said my name again. I felt the old childhood instinct to apologize for causing a scene rise to my tongue, and I swallowed it whole. I picked up my purse. I said, "Happy birthday," but I wasn't done fighting. By the time the sun came up, I hadn't slept. My phone showed 3 missed calls from Mom, a text from Laura. "Call me when you've cooled down," and nothing from Dad. I sat on the hotel bed scrolling bank records. I'd quietly helped. $68,000 for Mom's cancer treatment, $85,000 for Ethan's house, $36,000 for Laura's wedding, $4,800 for Dad's car, $28,000 for Mom's remodel, nearly $250,000 in 6 years, all through discreet agencies. Dad's words made it burn. By mid-morning, I decided my Savannah Beach house, once an investment, would be home. I wasn't waiting for apologies. I told my assistant Danielle to ship essentials and donate the rest to shelters. I wrote my parents a final letter. No amount of work or generosity earns respect here. I need space, built on mutual respect, not degrees. I mailed it and flew out. The flight to Savannah was a portal to a new life. The gray Spokane winter gave way to soft, salty air and crashing waves. My beach house, once a sterile investment, became home. I filled it with maker's pieces, pottery, rugs, wooden tables, breathing color into every corner. Each morning I walked the beach barefoot, coffee in hand, the horizon easing the knot in my chest. Running foundry and field remotely felt seamless. My team thrived, and I strategized clearer without office chaos. I joined Savannah's entrepreneurial circle, sharing my story. No degree, just grit, without shrinking. At a gallery opening, I met Harper, whose laugh made time vanish. Her circle of artists and chefs saw me, not my lack of a diploma, and our porch dinners felt like home. I thought I'd left my family completely behind until the call came. It was a Saturday morning 3 weeks after I'd settled in. My phone buzzed with a Spokane area code I knew too well. Ethan. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Nice place you've got," he said before I could speak, his voice echoing like he was walking around the open living room. "Ocean view and everything." My gut tightened. "What are you doing here?" "I was in the area," he said, like Savannah was on the way to anywhere from Washington State. "Thought I'd stop by, maybe get your take on an investment I'm looking at. Could use a little cash to get in on the ground floor." The script was so familiar, it could have been written in my sleep. "I'm not lending money to family anymore, Ethan," I said. "That chapter's closed." He paused, his jaw twitching, eyes narrowing like I'd broken an unspoken rule. So that's it? You move to your fancy beach house and forget the rest of us? Dad was right. I cut him off. Dad called me nothing and told me to leave. Is that what you came here to repeat? A beat of silence. He didn't mean it like that. You know how he gets. That wasn't him getting, I said. That was him telling me exactly what he thinks. When I closed the door behind him, his shoulders slumped, but I felt calm. That night, I called my lawyer and set up the Casey Jordan Makers Grant, a yearly $12,000 award for 5 community college students with proven entrepreneurial grit but no formal business background. The grant came with mentorship from real business owners, not just classroom instructors. Find people who've shipped products, met payroll, and survived a bad quarter, I told the committee. No one gets this who's only learned it from a textbook. Life in Savannah deepened. I planted a garden with native wildflowers that drew bees and butterflies. I adopted a rescue mutt named Finn, who insisted on curling up beside me while I worked. I took pottery classes and was hilariously bad, but every misshapen bowl still felt like progress. 6 weeks passed before the past tried to intrude again, this time in the form of a newspaper. The Savannah Business Journal ran a feature titled, "Local Entrepreneur Brings $18 million Marketplace to Coastal Georgia." The photo was me on my deck, ocean behind me, holding one of our Makers mugs. The journalist had done her homework, writing about how Foundry and Field had grown, our impact on American manufacturing, and the new grant program. The story got picked up by national outlets. LinkedIn lit up with congratulations from old classmates, some of whom had never spoken to me in school. Makers sent thank you notes, but the biggest ripple hit where I'd tried to avoid it, back home. The Spokane Gazette ran their own piece. Hometown Dropout builds national brand. I knew my parents read it because 2 days later, my phone buzzed with a text from Mom. Saw the article. Very proud of you. The next day, a voicemail from Dad. Amanda. He still slipped and used my middle name when he was trying to sound warm. Big news about your company. Always knew you had it in you. Guess there was a misunderstanding at my birthday. Call me back. A misunderstanding, like calling your daughter nothing was a bad phone connection. 3 days later, Mom again. Thinking of visiting Savannah next month. Would love to see your place. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I booked an emergency session with my therapist, Dr. Ross, who had been helping me untangle years of family dynamics. She laid out my options. Decline outright, agree but set strict boundaries, or use it as a chance to talk openly, if they were willing. I texted Mom back, "You can visit, but we need an honest conversation about what happened before we can move forward." She replied instantly, "Of course. We just want to put it behind us and be a family again." That line, "put it behind us," told me they still didn't see me. But I'd keep moving forward, building my own path, one step at a time. Then they came to my world. A month after Mom's text, they arrived in Savannah on a Tuesday afternoon, dressed more for church than a beach town. Dad wore a button-down and slacks, Mom in a navy dress, stiff against the coastal light. I'd arranged for them to stay at a boutique hotel down the road, not in my house, so I could keep my own space intact. We met at a beachfront restaurant for lunch. I'd chosen it deliberately, public enough to keep tempers in check, quiet enough to talk. Through the wide windows, the Atlantic rolled in under a sky so blue it looked painted. "This place is something," Dad said, gesturing toward the water. "You've done well. For yourself." That tiny pause before "for yourself" landed like a pebble in my shoe. "Thanks," I said, leaving the silence where it belonged. Mom jumped in with small talk. Their flight, the weather, the difference between Georgia heat and Washington chill. I smiled, answered politely, but didn't help the conversation drift anywhere safe. Halfway through, Dad cleared his throat. "I overreacted at my birthday." "You called me nothing and told me to leave," I said, voice steady. He looked at his plate. Your money felt like charity. Mom leaned in, eyes soft. We were scared you'd struggle without a degree. I hid my success to keep you comfortable, I said. I helped because I cared. They offered half apologies, but their words echoed old defenses. They came because my success was too public to ignore. After lunch, I drove them to my house. As soon as we stepped inside, their eyes darted to the ocean view, the wide deck, the handmade furniture. Mom traced a mug's edge, her eyes distant. Dad's shoulders softened. Ethan, who'd joined unannounced, stood stiffly by the door, his jaw tight with unspoken resentment. For the first time, I saw them actually take in what I'd built. This is quite something, Dad said. Would you like a tour? I asked. We walked through each room and I explained where pieces came from. A walnut table from Oregon, a quilt from Vermont, pottery from New Mexico, all made by our partner artisans. The whole time, I noticed something shift inside me. Their approval didn't matter the way it once did. I was proud whether they understood or not. On the deck, with the sun sliding toward the horizon, Dad finally said, "I'm sorry for what I said at my birthday. It was uncalled for, regardless of how surprised I was." It was the closest thing to a clean apology I'd ever heard from him, but it still had that hook, regardless of how surprised I was. "What hurt most," I said, "is realizing those words might be how you've always seen me, despite everything I've done." Mom's hands twisted, eyes soft. "We were proud, just scared for you." I gestured around us. "This is what it looks like. I built this with no degree, but with more hard work than I've ever seen anyone put into anything. That deserves respect, not dismissal." Dad nodded, eyes on the ocean. "You've built something real." Ethan stood silent, arms crossed, his jaw tight with unspoken resentment. By the time the stars came out, we'd reached something like a truce. Not reconciliation, just an agreement to keep things civil if we were going to try again. In the months after they flew back to Spokane, we kept to short weekly calls. The awkwardness thinned, but the old reflexes stayed. Mom sometimes caught herself before saying something about going back to school. Dad still asked about stability, like it was an itch he couldn't stop scratching. Laura called one evening, voice soft. "I'm sorry for that night, Casey. I should have stood up for you." I believed her. Ethan stayed distant, his only gesture a holiday text with a photo of his kid in a Foundry and Field t-shirt. Therapy with Dr. Ross became a weekly anchor. She helped me see how much of my life I'd spent chasing approval that was never going to come in the form I wanted. "Success isn't a stand-in for self-worth," she told me more than once, "and you can't buy real connection, no matter how generous you are." I'd quietly covered family expenses, nearly $250,000 over 6 years, all through discreet agencies to stay anonymous. Now, I gave differently, not to ease tension, but because I wanted to. The Maker's Grant grew into a mentorship program. Watching the first group of recipients launch Etsy stores, open pop-ups, and negotiate with suppliers made me feel a kind of pride my family's approval never had. A year after moving to Savannah, I hosted a dinner on my deck. Harper poured wine, Finn lay under the table, and the ocean hummed in the background. My friends, my chosen family, toasted to building the life you actually want. I raised my glass and thought about everything it had taken to get here. The failures, the long nights, the slammed doors, the things said in anger that can't be unsaid. Family can be blood, but it's also those who see and choose you. I'd learned my worth wasn't tied to their approval, but to the life I built with my own hands. If you like this story, please like this video. Subscribe to the channel and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left.